Every day before my daughter's wedding, my daughter tormented me. From childhood, my daughter taught me to be silent. She insulted me. She humiliated me. My last wedding gift to her shocked everyone. Dear friends, your comments mean the world to us. Like this video and right where you are watching us from, we will be happy to send you our regards. Every time my daughter corrected me, a small note inside my chest went mute. One of those background harmonies nobody notices missing until silence spreads like water under a locked door. On the first warm Saturday of May, that door felt ready to buckle. The south side of Chicago does spring in spurts. Yesterday, sleet tapped on bank windows. Today, sunlight poured down State Street like spilled syrup. I sat in the corner booth of Harold's Diner on 79th, cradling a lukewarm decaf and biting my tongue, just as I'd taught it to behave for 26 years. Across from me, my daughter April scrolled through a color palette on her phone, blush, champagne, bone, dove, and pushed a swatch card toward me the way dentists push consent forms. Mom, remember, subtle tones for the rehearsal dinner. No reds, no busy patterns. We want the brand cohesive. Brand, she meant herself. Around us, the diner hummed with fry grease and soft Motown, but the word left a metallic taste on my tongue. I traced one sample, eggshell, thinking how much it resembled the walls of the credit union lobby where I sat 8 hours a day. "All right, honey," I said, voice gentle enough to keep the room level. April's fiancé, Jay Wilson, slid into the booth, cheeks flushed from parking 2 blocks away. He kissed April's temple, then looked at me with that quiet politeness Midwestern boys learn from grandmothers who starch curtains. "Morning, Ms. Miller." "Clarissa," I corrected by habit. He never seemed to mind the formality, but I minded the hierarchy it built, brick by brick. Waitress Nadine filled our mugs. Jay added sugar and asked April about table linens. She answered briskly, then pivoted like a choreographer to me. "Mom, remember you said you'd rewrite your toast? Keep it under 90 seconds. No ad libs." Steam from my coffee blurred my glasses. I removed them to wipe the lenses, buying a second to steady the tremor inside. "I'll practice," I promised. The promise tasted flat, like grocery store frosting. April accepted it with a nod sharp enough to slice toast. Meanwhile, Nadine returned with plates. April's avocado toast looked like a magazine spread. My pancakes sagged under butter. Jay's eyes followed the server, but not in hunger. He was studying something else, the muscles at the edge of my smile. I dipped a fork into syrup and wondered if he sensed the weight pressing on my sternum, the years of don't and stop and never say that. Outside the window, the Green Line train rumbled overhead, shaking the diner's neon sign. It reminded me of 9th grade choir when a passing train drowned my solo, and April, then 9, whispered, "Guess that saved everyone." A tiny laugh from the parents' row, and my voice retreated so deep not even the Lord could coax it out during Sunday hymns. Some stories cling like burrs to wool. They travel decades undetected until someone pulls at the thread and the whole cardigan unravels. April refreshed her screen. "Mom, you sent the deposit for the florist, right?" I nodded. She kept scrolling. The diner's AC unit kicked on, rattling spoons. Jay leaned forward. "Ms. Miller, Clarissa, do you have any song requests for the mother-daughter dance?" April exhaled, a soft reprimand. "Choices invite variables." I swallowed a sigh. "Maybe something classic," I said. "But don't worry. We can decide later." Jay smiled, but April's phone chimed, another detail demanding acceptance. She rose, answering as she walked toward the restrooms. Jay watched her go, then turned back. "You okay?" 2 words, simple, offered like a coat in sudden rain. My instinct was to open an umbrella of reassurance. Instead, I felt the first flicker of an unpracticed answer, but April returned, pockets humming, and the flicker died. The check arrived. Jay reached for it. April waved him off. Budget, spreadsheets, influencer deal. I tucked a 20 beneath my plate anyway. Habit, or maybe hope, that generosity could quiet tension, April didn't even notice. As we parted in the parking lot, April reminded me about the toast. Remember, she said, brevity. Then she hugged me in that half-arm way that doesn't smudge makeup. Driving home along Cottage Grove, I replayed her directives like news bulletins scrolling across a screen. No red, no jokes, no chorus of praise that uses the word proud. My breath fogged the windshield despite mild temperatures. At a stoplight, I practiced the first line of my speech, trimming adjectives until it tasted like styrofoam. Sometimes silence isn't the lack of sound, but the echo of every word that never grew wings. That night, sleep refused the room. I sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand, dollar store notebook blank as fresh snow. The house ticked. Refrigerator, radiator, clock. But underneath I heard another tick, slow and certain, as if the idea of rhythm itself was pacing. I realized it was my own pulse, growing louder each time April's edits replayed. I envisioned a tiny wooden box, pendulum swinging, left, right, marking years of compliance. And suddenly I pictured what would happen if I placed that ticking on her wedding stage, let everyone else hear what she'd orchestrated. A shiver trailed my spine, equal parts dread and electricity. Upstairs, the bedroom ceiling showed faint cracks like unwritten staves of music. I hummed a note, low, testing the ceiling's acoustics. It sounded foreign, but alive. The idea settled into me the way seed settles under soil, still, but irreversible once water meets it. Would I dare? The question glowed in the dark, refusing sleep. Beside my notebook, I wrote one word, metronomy, accent mark and all, though I'd never studied French a day. By the time dawn light seeped through blinds, the page held the outline of a story I'd never told, and the first measure of a song I hadn't yet sung. Sunday morning arrived draped in choir robes. St. Mark's Baptist sat 3 blocks from my apartment, its brick facade weathered but proud like a grandmother's Sunday hat that has survived decades of rain. I slipped into a pew near the back, hoping to blend into stained glass shadows, but Otis Brown, fingers gliding over ivory, caught my eye mid-prelude. We'd grown up swapping sheet music margins. He could read my silence the way others read notes. After service, coffee hour buzzed with gossip about the Cubs and gas prices. Otis cornered me near the cookie table. "You sounded good today," he said. It was the oldest compliment in church culture, but he meant something else. "I heard you actually sing," I shrugged, embarrassed, just following the melody. He handed me a waxed cup of punch. "Melody's been following you for years. You just stopped long enough for it to catch up." Before I found an answer, April breezed in, late, phone glued to palm, and beamed bright enough to commandeer the room. She kissed my cheek, tasting store-bought lipstick. "Mom, quick question." She pulled me aside, lowered her voice. "You're still good to pay for the extra centerpiece upgrades?" The vendor bumped the price. My chest tightened. Another $400 carved from a paycheck already promised to rent. Out loud, "Of course, sweetie." She squeezed my hand, reward token affection, then turned to Otis. "Hi, Mr. Brown. Mom still talks about your recitals." He smiled polite, but his gaze flicked toward me, question lingering. April drifted off to network with deacons for sponsorship tags, everything in her life monetized. Otis leaned in. She knows your heart's a great river and she's building dams upstream. The metaphor stung. Truth often pricks before it heals. I whispered, I let it happen. Otis reached into his messenger bag, producing a battered wooden box, lacquer dulled with age. Found this yesterday at the thrift store down on 63 Yard, he said. He opened the lid. A brass pendulum twitched, then fell still. Metronome, he pronounced slowly, tapping the umlaut. It keeps time for people too scared to trust their own. I touched the wood, warm, as if it had stored sunlight. Otis wound the key. The pendulum swung. Tick, tock. The sound felt familiar and accusatory, like footsteps pacing forgotten halls. I thought you might have a use for it, he said. Another punch cup choir lady approached. Otis slipped the box into my tote before drifting away. Driving home, every red light seemed timed to the metronome's echo, though it sat closed on the passenger seat. Part of me wanted to hurl it into Lake Michigan. Instead, I carried it upstairs, set it on the kitchen counter, and let it tick, while I prepared lunches for the work week. Each swing measured memories. Age 6, April pushing away my hug. Age 10, rewriting my praise. Age 13, blaming her failing grade on my explanation. Age 17, editing my dress, my song, my stories. The beat followed a pattern: tick, surrender, talk, compliance, until the rhythm began to warp. Midnight found me at the sewing machine, altering a thrift store sheath dress I'd bought in secret, crimson, bold. April's palette had no slot for such heat, but as I pinned the hem, the ticking box on the table kept me aligned to a tempo older than her rules. If you can keep time for everyone else, I thought, you can keep it for yourself. I hummed again, low, steady, seam allowance matching breath allowance. When the dress hung finished, I glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. Monday waited like a stern supervisor, but fatigue couldn't mute the thrill coursing under my ribs. I placed the metronome on the dresser opposite my bed, wound it once, then lay down listening to its swing carve space through darkness. The sound no longer accused. It invited. Before sleep claimed me, I whispered to the ceiling, soon. Morning commute erased my daring with spreadsheets and customer signatures, but the hum persisted, a secret frequency only I could hear. At lunch, I opened a blank Word document titled Wedding Toast. The cursor blinked like a metronome in miniature. I began to type, each sentence a feather ruffling dusty wings. Time is the drum we all march to, but sometimes we forget who holds the sticks. My coworkers chatted about playoff brackets. I kept writing until characters spilled over the page like gospel arpeggios. I printed the draft and folded it deep in my purse. After work, April called. Mom, quick survey. Do you think ivory or bone napkins photograph better? The question felt so weightless compared to the speech smoldering in my bag that laughter escaped before I could cage it. She paused. Everything okay? Everything's rhythmic, I replied, cryptic even to myself. She sighed. Static of exasperation crackled through the line, but changed the subject to hashtag strategy for the event. I murmured agreement, eyes on the crimson dress draped over the armchair like fire waiting for oxygen. Night fell heavy, clouds swallowing city lights until only house lamps dotted the block like late-bloom asters. I turned the metronome's key again. Tick, tock. My pulse synced. In that private concert, I choreographed an entrance. No apologies, no disclaimers, just the steady reveal of a gift wrapped not in ribbon but implication. The pendulum's glint reflected in my glasses. I imagined hundreds of tiny reflections bouncing in the reception hall once the box hit stage lights. A tremor of fear tried to claim me. What if they think I'm cruel? But courage rode the rhythm, answering, "Cruelty is a story we tell women who finally seal the leak in their throat." The thought steadied my shoulders. I set my alarm for 6 and slept with the metronome still ticking, its sound a promise my subconscious could rehearse. By Friday, wedding week buzz replaced spring's birdsong. April arranged a final walkthrough at Lakefield Hall, a renovated warehouse overlooking the Chicago River, exposed rafters, brick walls, string lights, industrial chic curated for Instagram saturation. She'd instructed me to arrive camera ready for a vendor meet and greet interview. I wore a muted gray blazer over jeans, compliant camouflage, crimson dress hidden in a garment bag at home. Inside the venue, florists crisscrossed ladders, draping eucalyptus garlands. April commanded from center like a director on a film set, tablet in hand. Jay adjusted table numbers. Calm amidst chaos, when I greeted him, he pressed a warm palm to my shoulder. "You look tired, Clarissa." "Anticipation keeps a person awake," I said. He laughed softly. "I've been up sketching the honeymoon cabin. April hasn't seen it yet. Surprise." His voice held hope tinged with something cautious. Before I could ask, April beckoned me. She wanted me to test the sound equipment. "Just read a line from any document, Mom. Check volume consistency." The podium faced empty chairs waiting for guests not yet present. My throat tightened as if recognizing déjà vu. I cleared it and unfolded a napkin, nearest paper, and read the manufacturer's care instructions. My voice sounded small, yet each syllable traveled to the back wall, echoing faint. Technicians nodded approval. April smiled, satisfied, already pivoting to the next crisis. During a break, Veronica Wilson, Jay's mother, approached with cordial grace. "Clarissa," she drawled, layering Southern honey over Chicago steel. "We so appreciate everything you're doing. Weddings bring out intense sides." She lowered her voice. "April's vision is very precise." Diplomacy shimmered in her eyes, a plea for patience. I returned the smile, but inside I felt the metronome's swing accelerate, tick where compromise once lived, talk where voice prepared to stand. Evening rehearsal followed at St. Michael's Chapel. Pews smelled of lemon oil and roses delivered too early. Reverend Harris guided positions. Groom front left, bride front right, mother's light candle together. April gestured for me to move half step back. Optical symmetry. I obeyed. Candle smoke spiraled, like a spirit leaving flesh. In the flicker, I saw my younger self humming backstage, then stepping back one more inch and another until swallowed by curtains. Reverend concluded with prayer. Jay clasped April's hand. She squeezed his fingers harder than devotion required. I caught him wince, then smile through it. Outside, sunset bled coral across the river. Otis emerged from the chapel loft, having tested the piano. He winked, patting the messenger bag slung over his shoulder. I nodded, a secret handshake in silence. In the parking lot, April reminded me of call times, vendor confirmations, the toast length. Under 90 seconds, remember? I kissed her cheek, inhaling notes of jasmine perfume overlaying stress. Driving home, skyline lights flickered like sheet music dots, some bright, some burned out. I thought how melodies survive even when bulbs burst. At home, I unpacked the crimson dress, hung it on the closet door, and dimmed the lamp to see how shadow and color conversed. The dress didn't merely glow, it declared. The speech lay on my nightstand, edited only for clarity of story, not brevity. I placed the metronome beside it, wound, listened. Tick. Past acquiescence. Talk. Pending liberation. Sleep came shallow, punctured by visions of applause mixing with gasps. Yet even in nightmare scenarios, Veronica swooning, April storming, I felt an undercurrent of calm. Because the story I would tell wasn't about humiliation, it was about rhythm and what happens when one musician finally hears her cue. Saturday dawned in hush. I brewed strong coffee, stronger than April would approve. As I sipped, the metronome's pendulum slowed. I lifted the lid, pressed the lever to silence, and for the first time in years, the quiet felt like mine. The wedding day had begun, and so had the longest 90 seconds of my life. Seconds already swelling beyond constraint, ready to spill into halls where time finally would march to a different drum. Dawn lifted over Chicago like a reluctant stage curtain, gray silk snagged on rooftop antennas. Inside Lakefield Hall, caterers in hairnets whispered as if afraid to wake the bricks. I arrived 2 hours before anyone had scheduled me. Crimson dress folded in a garment bag, metronome tucked in my purse beside lipstick, the color of summer cherries. The cavernous space smelled of eucalyptus, lemon polish, and something faintly electric. Anticipation arcing between string light filaments, even before the switch threw. I needed solitude long enough to memorize the floor's creaks, to feel the echo of my own steps. Each clap of heel against polished concrete affirmed that the building would not swallow my voice. My palm found the podium where I'd soon stand. Its wood felt cool, almost damp with nerves, borrowed from every shy speaker who'd ever prayed for courage. I traced the grain until my pulse slowed, listening to distant gulls over the river and a delivery truck's backup beeper, counting down like a heartbeat. The florist's assistant wheeled in another cart of white roses, April's decree. Nothing loud, nothing that pulled focus. Yet one bloom had opened too far. Pink tinged its edges like a blush that couldn't keep a secret. Without thinking, I rescued it from the discard bucket and slipped the stem through my blazer's lapel. A small protest, fragrant and round as a whispered yes. Soon, April burst through the double doors, entourage in tow, hairdresser, makeup artist, videographer balancing a gimbal. Her energy bounced off walls, magnified by caffeine and bridal adrenaline. She clocked the bloom on my lapel. Eyelids twitched, but words stayed holstered, perhaps spent by the schedule she wielded like a metronome of her own. She air-kissed my cheek, 1 centimeter of space, and marched toward the drapery crew to debate backdrop symmetry. Jay arrived next, cheeks ruddy from the May wind cutting off the lake. He carried 2 paper cups. Wordless, he offered me the one with a C scrawled across the lid. Real coffee, not decaf. Steam swirled upward, teasing the rose scent into flight. He followed my gaze toward April, fussing over chair angles. She's been up since 4, cross-checking the seating chart. His voice held tenderness and worry braided tight. I said, perfection is a costume that pinches after midnight. He let the cup warm his hands, considering whether love could loosen that costume. Before either of us spoke further, the photographer called him away into morning light for detail shots of cufflinks and prayer-tied shoelaces. Veronica, the groom's mother, drifted in wearing pewter silk and the expression of someone assigned a fragile truce. She praised the eucalyptus swag, patted my hand, and murmured that the day looked beautiful already. I thanked her, but she held my fingers, reading the tension coiled beneath skin. Softly, sometimes beauty costs more than tenderness can pay. Then she released me and floated toward the pastry table to adjust signage no one would read. Vendors choreographed their tasks, linen snapped, violinists tuned, ice sculpture sweated under cling wrap. Yet beneath all bustle, a fine crackling grew, like parchment near flame. Every time April barked a correction, a ripple spread among staff, then vanished into busyness. Nobody mutinied. They folded their spines in polite half bows. I recognized the acrobatics. I'd trained my own backbone into similar curves. At 11 sharp, April summoned bridal party rehearsal in the mezzanine lounge. She distributed emergency kits, stain pens, safety pins, blister pads. When my turn came, she handed me a tiny lavender pouch. Ibuprofen's inside in case nerves trigger your headaches, she explained so sweetly that guilt flickered behind her eyes. Quick, away. I thanked her, clutching the pouch like a pressed flower. The gesture almost softened me until she whispered, "And remember, 90 seconds." I nodded while counting slow beats of an internal pendulum. 90 seconds for her version of me, as many heartbeats as needed for mine. The string quartet rehearsed Pachelbel. Notes spiraled up stone columns like vines seeking sun. Between chords, I heard Otis Brown at the grand piano downstairs, mapping gospel chords onto a Steinway that didn't know Sunday joy. I slipped away, descending the iron stair, drawn by that vibration older than shame. He greeted me with a conspirator's grin. "Ready for curtain?" I exhaled, whatever answer wavered between fear and fire. Otis lifted the piano lid to reveal the wooden box resting where sheet music should be. "Don't forget your prop," he said. "I could recite without it," I murmured, "but will they hear?" He placed the metronome in my hands. It felt heavier than before, as if every syllable I'd suppressed had condensed into wood and brass. He nodded toward the aisle runner above. "Time's job is to pass. Your job is to decide whether it passes over you or through you." I tucked the box back into my purse. On the mezzanine, Jay and the groomsmen posed for a photo. April swooped to arrange pocket squares. The photographer's flash bloomed, white heat vanishing, like glimpses of futures if no one dared reframe. In that afterglow, Jay's eyes found mine, brief and questioning. Is this the storm where we lose sails or the one that blows us home? By noon, servers lit votive candles, though daylight flooded skylights. Flames trembled against glass cylinders, tiny hearts practicing bravery for evening vows. I slipped a folded copy of my speech beneath the podium's shelf. Fingers steady now. The real version lived in memory and muscle. Candles flickered. Somewhere deep a drumbeat began, not percussion, not nerves, but the sound of a door unlocking after decades of polite knock. The bridal suite overlooked the river, floor-to-ceiling windows vesting the water in sequins of midday sun. Inside, curling iron cords tangled like vines around extension strips, while aerosol hairspray scented the air with sticky florals. April, enveloped in satin robe, perched under a ring light as makeup artists painted cheekbones into porcelain slopes. She directed her selfie camera between brush strokes, greeting followers. "Countdown, 5 hours till I do." I sat on a love seat near the wall, invisible except for the moment when April instructed the stylist to tone down Mom's eyeshadow to neutral. The makeup artist complied, buffing a mauve shimmer back to beige. I studied my reflection, lids muted, but irises bright as if something danced behind them. Bridesmaids fluttered around, ushers delivering last-minute garment bags. Through chatter, I caught fragments, seating grid glitch, DJ's laptop frozen, dessert bar delayed. Stress ricocheted, splintering April's composure in flashes, an exasperated sigh, a clipped command. Each tremor shuddered outward, then disappeared under layers of apology that felt tailored for the camera. Jay texted her updates. She typed swift replies, thumbs clicking. I glimpsed one message. "Your mom forgot the jazz playlist. Fix it." The words thudded. Did she mean Veronica or me? Unclear. I tapped April's arm. "Which playlist?" She blinked confusion, then waved it off. "Already handled." Her voice slid metallic. She was soldering cracks before they widened. For a beat, I saw the little girl who once feared I'd embarrass her at field day races. The fear had grown into scaffolding. Hair finished, she asked if my toast was printable for the videographer's captions. Later, I answered. She didn't press, trusting her earlier edit had trimmed surprises. Yet trust built on control is a house of cards waiting for breath. At 3 o'clock, rain clouds stacked over the lake like dark linen on laundry lines. Weather alerts chimed phones. April paled. Outdoor portrait plan threatened. Veronica smoothed her arm. Rain on a wedding day seeds prosperity, she offered. April forced a smile that cracked at the edges. Jay arrived with an umbrella bouquet, pressing a kiss to her forehead. The photographer captured the moment. Lens hid a bruise of doubt blooming behind April's lashes. I ferried garment bags, fetched electrolyte packets, stitched small tears in a bridesmaid's hem. Every task hummed with an undercurrent. Tick-tock. The metronome remained zipped in my purse, but its rhythm pulsed behind rib and ear. 90 minutes before ceremony, the coordinator corralled processional lineup. Ushers forgot rehearsal steps. April snapped. Jay intervened calmly, redirecting confusion. I watched him steady her storm, thinking of a lighthouse. Its light only matters if the keeper refuels it each dusk. Would he tire of trimming wicks? In the foyer, groomsmen practiced knuckle-bump choreography. Jay caught my elbow. "How are you holding up?" I almost laughed. My question to him mirrored back. "Today's a long breath," I said. He exhaled as if sharing the lung. His gaze dipped to my lapel, pink rose now fully open despite cold air. Beautiful choice. Before I thanked him, April called, voice sharp. He hurried away. I slipped into a side hallway where stained glass transoms tinted light amber. There I unfolded my speech, scanning sentences like detective clues. The story beat inside the lines, ready for release. I pictured the metronome on podium wood, pendulum catching chandelier gleam, each tick echoing against plates and mindsets. A tremor of doubt rippled. If revelation wounded could love suture? Yet another voice rose, steady, unafraid. Sometimes love is the stitch made of sharp needle and strong thread. A bridesmaid burst in, frantic. "We need safety pins." I handed over 3. She rushed off without noticing the paper in my hand. I refolded the speech, slipped it back, and touched the wooden box to confirm it still warmed under its lid. 5:05 p.m. Guests arrived, umbrellas dripping. A string trio switched to Gershwin while seating. The rain eased, a hush settling as clouds thinned into cotton. Reverend Daniels took his place at the altar arch, tapping mic, test, test. The coordinator signaled mothers to light unity candles. Veronica glided first. I followed, whispering silent prayer. Let flame tell truth. Our tapers touched wicks. Twin fires flared, danced, then steadied. Smoke curled like script across the aisle where April would soon walk. On my way back, I crossed paths with Otis wheeling the piano bench into position for the recessional. He winked, lips shaping silent bar of amazing grace. I nodded. When I reached my seat, heart drummed a tempo faster than the string trio's waltz. Yet beneath nerves lay a calm plateau. I knew my lines. I knew the gift I carried. And I knew the moment timing would tip the story. From behind double doors came shuffle of satin. The processional began. Music swelled. Debussy's Clair de Lune, notes floating over whisper hush. Bridesmaids traced the aisle in pairs, lavender dresses glinting under Edison bulbs. Jay appeared, spine tall, eyes fixed on the doors awaiting April. Rain-filtered sunlight broke through skylights, casting a brief halo around him. Cameras clicked like cicadas. Then April stepped in, arm hooked through Clarissa's brother Terence, her biological father absent by choice years ago. Gasps rustled. She looked breathtaking, gown beaded like morning dew. She glided forward, yet the poise I'd rehearsed in her sway wavered a fraction. When she passed the second row, droplets from bouquet kissed the aisle runner, nerves sweating stems. She reached Jay. Terence placed her hand in his. Words blurred after that. Reverend's welcome, prayer, reading from Corinthians until vows began. Jay's voice steady. Promises seasoned with failures admitted before they happen. April's vows read polished, brand safe, yet when thunder rumbled distant, her words trembled like leaves in wind. Rings exchanged, Reverend pronounced them, husband and wife. Applause erupted. Then Otis struck chord progressions that coaxed sunlight again through glass. Jay and April recessed, giddy relief loosening shoulders. Guests followed to cocktail hour filled with jazz, charcuterie, and the smell of wet umbrellas. Reception hall flipped swiftly. Candles relit, dinner plates set. I slipped away to change. In a small restroom, I donned crimson dress, rouge lips, scarlet shoes. Mirror reflected someone who had traded camouflage for flair. I wound the metronome key 3 turns, feeling gears catch. Back in the hall, jaws tilted, some admiration, some confusion. Veronica's eyes widened, then softened into a smile, an ally revealed. Jay's delighted grin suggested he'd suspected color lurked beneath my neutrals. April hadn't noticed. Her back turned, while the photographer staged rings atop cake frosting. Dinner passed. Salmon, herb rice, toasts from best man herded into neat humor. Coordinator tapped mic. Mother of the bride will now share a few words. April exhaled relief, believing she'd previewed the script. I rose, box in hands. Podium lights hit crimson fabric, sparking whispers. I placed the metronome gently on wood, lid closed, pendulum still. I didn't open speech notes. They lived inside heartbeat. My daughter measures life in beats per minute, I began, smile soft. When she danced at age 6, she timed her twirls to clock ticks. When she took AP English, essays marched to phone alarms. And when she learned to manage social feeds, she edited seconds like puzzle pieces. Guests chuckled. April's smile brightened, but caution flickered. I, too, learned her rhythms, I continued, fingers resting on the box. Each time she asked me to step back, I counted the steps. Each note I swallowed timed itself between 2 ticks. I lifted the lid. Pendulum swung. The hall fell silent except for brass on brass. Tick-tock. This is the sound you know, darling, I said, addressing April directly now. The beat of things unspoken. Eyes widened across tables. The rhythm drilled memory. Tick. When Mom quieted her hymn so you wouldn't blush. Talk. When Mom blamed herself for a grade she never earned. Tick. When she paid extra so you could claim effortless grace. Somewhere in back, a fork clinked against china, then stilled. April's cheeks flushed rose deeper than bouquet. Jay's hand touched hers. But time keeps honest books, I said, voice clear. Today I return this rhythm not to you, daughter, but to the man who promises to cherish your voice in his own. I turned to Jay. If ever a command hides inside your heartbeat, may this remind you to pause, listen, and if needed, stop the pendulum. I stepped around podium, offering the box to Jay. Murmurs rippled, surprise, respect, a few apprehensions crossing faces like quick clouds. Jay accepted it with both hands, thumb brushing the brass arm until it stilled. He looked into April's eyes. Our marriage gets its own tempo. Silence stretched, breath thin, then applause rustled. First Veronica, Then Otis's piano chords, blooming gentle. Soon the hall clapped. Not thunderous, but warm. Some faces shone with tears, others wore thoughtful frowns. April's voice small. Mom. Why? I returned to podium beside her, microphone catching our whispers anyway. Because I love the music you'll write together, but I won't be its metronome anymore. Her eyes shimmered, hurt wrestling with revelation. Jay squeezed her hand. I finished aloud. May we all honor the rhythms of those we love and never ask them to march to silence. Toast complete, I lifted glass. Glasses rose, chorus of hear hear fluttered. Jay set the metronome between place settings. Pendulum still. April touched his sleeve, tears finally spilling. Not in anger, but release no filter could refine. In her eyes I read a door opened, narrow but real. Dinner resumed. Conversations buzzed with new timbre, quieter, truer. Veronica leaned over. Bold and beautiful, she whispered. Otis played a jazz lullaby that made candles shimmy. Later, on the dance floor, April approached. Her cheeks blotched, mascara smudged, human for once, not curated. Mom, you set the whole room spinning. Voice quivered, but maybe it needed spinning. She reached for my hand. We stepped into mother-daughter sway as Otis shifted to an old Sam Cooke number. No choreography, no cameras. Just two women finding a rhythm not measured by ticks but by breaths shared. Across the room, Jay watched, hand resting on the silent metronome, and the pendulum, though still, caught the glint of chandeliers, holding promise rather than command. Rain lifted during the last hour of the reception as if the sky decided enough tears had fallen indoors. An afterglow settled across Lakefield Hall. Candles guttered low, centerpieces drooped, and laughter thinned to murmurs woven through Frank Sinatra's final encore. April and Jay slipped out for twilight photos by the river. Guests chased ride shares or kept bartenders busy with one more for the road. I lingered at a corner table, heels off, crimson dress pooling like poured wine, watching the silent metronome framed by crumpled napkins and half-eaten cheesecake. Veronica approached, her pewter gown now dusted with powdered sugar confetti from the donut wall. The box is quiet, she said. I nodded. Sometimes quiet speaks louder. She sank into the chair beside me, sighing in relief that fought tight satin. My first year of marriage, I lost my voice, too. Gave it away, really. Took years to reel it back. She twirled her dessert fork. You just handed April a map. It's up to her if she follows it. Before I answered, Otis slid a glass of water my way. Hydrate, he said, then ambled back to disassemble mic cables. The band had packed up, but he remained guarding the Steinway from tipsy guests who fancied themselves Ray Charles. Water tasted metallic against exhaustion. Adrenaline drained now, left my limbs humming. April and Jay returned, cheeks dewy from mist rising off the river. Jay carried the metronome. April clutched her skirt hem as though afraid a gust might spill secrets still rippling inside. They reached the table. Mom, could we talk outside? She asked, voice politely public. I slipped on shoes, followed them to the terrace where string lights flickered overhead like fireflies trapped in glass. Lavender floated from planters mixing with petrichor. April folded arms, gaze on downtown skyline lit up like a circuit board. What you said, she paused, lips trembling for the right register. Jay rested a hand at her back, a gentle conductor coaxing rest from tension. It stung, she finished. I exhaled. Truth sometimes does, sweetheart. She traced a railing bolt. I didn't realize how many moments felt like commands to you. I thought I was curating. Her laugh broke, thin and unsure. Ever since Dad left, I needed control so things didn't fall apart. The admission felt like windows thrown open in winter. I leaned closer. I kept quiet because I feared adding to your losses. But silence built a cage for both of us. Jay looked between us, then offered the metronome. May I keep it at the apartment? A reminder to choose breath over edit. April's shoulders relaxed. She nodded. I smiled. An inch of trust restored. In headlights from the valet loop, pendulum caught a fleeting glint as if winking. From inside came the DJ's final announcement, shuttle departing. April hugged me, full-armed, mascara smudging my collar. Your voice today was beautiful, she pulled back. Promise me you won't mute it again. I stroked curl free from her bun. Only if you promise not to mute yours either. Deal sealed in silent tears, she linked fingers with Jay and headed to farewell tunnel of sparklers. I watched sparks paint fleeting constellations as they drove off. 2 silhouettes in back seat. Box resting between, pendulum still. Inside my chest, a new rhythm began drafting itself. Not tick-tock, but a slow gospel sway. Morning after, sunlight barged through my apartment blinds, indifferent to sore feet and confetti stuck to scalp. I brewed coffee strong as church gossip and opened the fridge to find it emptier than my checking account. Roses from reception sighed in a vase, petals bruised purple overnight. I fingered the pink bloom from my lapel, now curled at edges, and pressed it between cookbook pages. Church began at 11. I arrived early despite fatigue, drawn by habit and the promise of music unfiltered. Sanctuary smelled of lemon oil and lilies. Otis, already at piano, nodded when he saw crimson fabric still blazing. Color suits you, he said. Choir director asked me to lead the alto section. Our usual leader home with flu. Panic flickered, but memory of last night's applause steadied me. I stepped forward, heart drumming a new tempo, and counted the choir into Blessed Assurance. My voice rose, shaky at first, then filled rafters until even stained glass seemed to vibrate. When final chord faded, a hush lingered, people listening for echoes. I felt taller than pews. After service, Reverend Daniels requested a word. We met in his wood-paneled office where diplomas hung like hymnal verses. He complimented yesterday's speech. Veronica had filled him in. Authenticity, he said, is contagious. He asked if I'd consider teaching a storytelling workshop for youth group this summer. My breath caught. Public speaking beyond 90 seconds. The old me would have declined. The new rhythm nudged. Yes, I accepted, cheeks warm with daring. Leaving church, sunlight glinted off rain puddles, turning asphalt into mirrors. At home, I balanced my ledger. Florist upcharge drafted Monday. Credit union paycheck posted Wednesday. Tuition for April's overdue Pilates membership auto-charged Thursday. My pen hovered over checkbook. I realized the habit of cushioning her life at my expense had outlived its context. I texted April, "Time to transfer your subscription. Love you. 3 dots dance." Then she replied, "Understood. Love you more. No protest, just acknowledgement. Small liberation." Late afternoon, I visited Jay and April's new apartment in West Loop, brick loft, plants drooping from moving stress. They unpacked gifts. I delivered leftover salmon and a borrowed garment steamer. Metronome sat on kitchen island, lid open, pendulum at rest. Jay brewed herbal tea, April arranged mugs. Conversation meandered, unhurried. At one point, April touched the box. "We tried to wind it last night," she said, "but decided to wait. Maybe we'll set our own tempo first, then see if the pendulum follows." I admired the thought. Create rhythm before measuring it. Growth sprouting already. Jay asked if I'd review draft designs for a community garden he planned near South Shore. I studied sketches. Raised beds shaped like treble clefs. Benches curved as bass clefs. Music etched into soil. "You're planting scores," I said. He laughed. Hadn't noticed until then. April snapped a photo captioning it, "Harmony in Loam." As evening settled, Jay's phone buzzed. "Landscaper emergency at tomorrow's site." He slipped on jacket. April offered to join. He urged her to rest. She looked at me. Instead of defaulting to his preference, she waited, really waited. Then kissed him goodbye and stayed behind. Progress. We drank tea among half-empty boxes. Silence felt companionable. April finally spoke. "When Dad left, I promised myself never to feel powerless again. Controlling details felt safer than admitting fear." Her confession wove into steam above mugs. I replied, "I patched that fear by making everything easy for you, but without friction, growth stalls." We held gaze, both seeing the years between us like laundry on a line, winds shifting it into new shapes. She asked about workshop Reverend suggested. I shrugged sheepish, scared but ready. Her eyes widened with genuine pride. She offered help designing promotional posters, reciprocity replacing hierarchy, a fresh chord entwined into our score. Clock struck 9. I gathered purse. April insisted Jay drive me after he returned. I declined. Bus stop close, air warm. She walked me downstairs, hugged tight, repeating goodnights. As I crossed street, I glanced back. Apartment window framed her silhouette, unmoving. Pendulum might be still, but something inside those walls surely swayed. Bus ride home rattled, but in ear I replayed choir harmonies mixed with apartment steam kettle. City lights flickered across a river like sheet music waiting for performers. I hummed under breath, not caring who heard. 2 teenage passengers filmed each other for TikTok. One caught my tune, grinned, sang harmony. Our stoplights dinged. We parted strangers bound by accidental melody. Back home, I pinned workshop flyers outlined to corkboard, scribbled lesson ideas, finding your voice, body language as instrument, when pause becomes power. Below I taped the rose petal, flattened yet still scented faint. In quiet hallway, refrigerator hummed, radiators clicked, yet beneath appliances I noticed a new sound. My own hum asserting presence in domestic orchestra. I wound the metronome on bedside table. Tick, tock, but instead of dictating, it accompanied. I tapped foot, improvising syncopation. Eventually, I let pendulum wind down, silence settling soft. The rhythm lived in me now, no mechanical guide required. Sleep arrived gentle, carrying dreams of garden beds shaped like clefts and youth voices lifting rafters. 2 weeks passed in accelerating bloom. Chicago traded jackets for short sleeves. Tulips flared outside the Art Institute like brush strokes. My storytelling workshop premiered in church basement. 12 teens circling folding tables scarred by decades of bake sales. We opened with 2 truths and a lie, but framed as 3 rhythmic taps on desks. Students explored how cadence cues revelation, their voices timid at first, then elastic, bouncing slang between metaphors. Each session ended with Otis demonstrating how a melody can shift when you change the downbeat, showing them that stories, like songs, thrive on unexpected accents. April styled our promotional flyers, posting them online. Enrollment doubled. She attended one evening, hovering near coffee urn until coaxed to join group exercise. Watching her craft a spoken word piece about social media fatigue felt like seeing a bird examine a newly oiled wing. She concluded with a line, "I'm trending softer now, listen close." Applause swelled. She blushed but didn't deflect. Jay's community garden broke ground. Volunteers, church folk, teens, neighbors, tilled soil that smelled of rain-dark coffee. I assigned seedlings names of jazz legends, Ella tomatoes, Coltrane cucumbers. April filmed promo reels capturing children planting seeds while Otis riffed blues on portable keyboard. Jay hung the metronome from a post at garden gate, pendulum free to catch wind. Instead of ticking, it clicked softly when breeze nudged, random, playful. Visitors tapped it like a doorbell. One Saturday dusk, we held picnic among raised beds, lanterns swaying. Veronica recited Maya Angelou. Teens performed freestyle. I sang harmony. April snapped candid shots, no filters needed. She showed me one. My head thrown back mid-laugh, crimson dress repurposed as summer blouse, garden lantern haloing hair. In caption draft she typed, "When silence turns into song." I rested forehead against hers, tears uninvited but welcome. Later that week, my credit union manager offered promotion to branch outreach coordinator, position requiring community engagement presentations. Old Clarissa might have declined. I accepted. First assignment: host literacy finance seminar at high school auditorium. When nerves pricked, I pictured teen workshop circle nodding along and April mouthing, "You got this." Pendulum inside steadied. On the eve of seminar, April called late. "Mom, quick question." She laughed at echo of past phrasing. "Would you review my pitch deck? I'm submitting to head PR an idea about authentic storytelling for clients." Pride warmed like sun on seedlings. We co-worked via video. At midnight, she yawned. I asked if the metronome still clicked. "Only when wind's right," she said. "It's less measuring, more reminding." When seminar day came, I walked onto stage, heart fluttering like pages in fan. I set no metronome on podium. Instead, I tapped foot lightly, feeling blood percussion. Audience of teens littered bleachers, skeptical. I began with story of a girl who muted her mother, then realized every voice lost diminishes the choir. Eyes lifted from phones. I taught compound interest by comparing it to harmony lines layering over melody, growth exponential when voices cooperate. By closing applause, principal invited future series. Backstage, April awaited with bouquet of sunflowers. We hugged long. She whispered, "You were born for spotlights you dimmed." I answered, "You helped me rewire the switch." Jay took photos as evidence. Summer twilight gilded streets as we walked to bus stop. A breeze lifted. April's hair danced. She laughed free. I realized ticking I once feared had transformed, not orders but chances, moments to step in, speak up, shift rhythm. At home, I wound my bedside metronome just once. Click, clack, then stopped it, smiled, and crawled under covers. Outside, city boomed distant bass lines, sirens, laughter, all part of one vast composition. My pulse joined, steady, self-directed. Tomorrow would bring new measures, but tonight music hummed inside, unmuted, waiting only for morning to turn the page. August painted Chicago in a palette of brass and cobalt. Brass sun, cobalt shadows pooled beneath L trains that screeched like metal hawks. The garden by the tracks thrived against that grating soundtrack. Ripe Ella tomatoes, Coltrane cucumbers curling around rebar trellises, Billie Holiday basil releasing velvet perfume at the slightest brush. Yet beneath the abundance, an undercurrent of tension wound tight as a clock spring, felt most sharply by those who had learned to hear beats between beats. It began with an email pinging April's phone long after midnight, an offer from a downtown agency promising a salary big enough to put marble counters in any condo she chose. The catch: She would manage rebranding for a chain of luxury condos displacing historic row houses on the south side. Just 4 blocks from the garden Jay and the neighborhood had coaxed from rubble. April read the contract at the kitchen table, laptop glow whitening her face while the metronome on the shelf clicked softly in breeze-spun nudges like a cat asking if anyone was awake. Morning brought the email to Jay's inbox via April's forward. Look at the numbers. This covers our student loans in 2 years. He studied the attachment at their unfinished breakfast bar, next to a jar of Billy basil waiting to root in water. Opportunity pulsed off the screen, but so did the blueprint overlay that showed raised beds replaced by valet parking. He didn't reply, chose instead to pull weeds with neighborhood kids until sweat blurred his hesitation. That evening, Clarissa arrived to teach the teens how pacing shifts tension in stories. She found Jay hunched near compost bins, shoulders knotted. He handed her a copy of the proposal. She deserves the world, he whispered, but this job raises the corner of it I'm trying to build. Clarissa skimmed the itinerary. Demolition timetables, influencer partnerships, color schemes in tasteful shades of eviction. The rhythm she heard in her head faltered, replaced by off-kilter beats that made breathing choppy. April joined them after reviewing mood boards with a contractor via FaceTime. She glowed with the prospect of a national campaign, yet shadows beneath her eyes hinted at cost. Clarissa saw the 12-year-old inside her daughter, proud after winning a spelling bee, but afraid classmates would call her teacher's pet, clinging to success like a shield. Clarissa cleared her throat, choosing words the way a cellist selects bow pressure, warm enough to resonate, firm enough to be heard. Honey, when you hold a job, make sure it doesn't squeeze everything else out of your hands. April bristled. Mom, this is finally my own stage. She gestured toward the garden beds glowing gold in setting sun. We need money more than a patch of cucumbers. Jay's jaw tightened. He said nothing, but the basil jar between them released scent like you'd crush leaves to staunch bleeding. Teens drifted away, sensing storm fronts even adults ignored. Otis wiped piano keys, silence replacing his usual after-session blues riff. Clarissa felt the old reflex, that urge to hush waters before they slapped against hulls, but she'd retired the role of tide calmer. Instead, she placed a hand on Jay's shoulder. I hear your rhythm drowning in noise, she said softly. Speak it. Jay inhaled, voice steady but low. Replacing history with high-rise isn't a brand story I can partner with. April snapped. So I'm the villain for landing a dream job? Her words sliced, but the blade dulled halfway, snagging on doubt. Clarissa interjected. Dreams worth keeping don't knock other people awake crying. April's lip trembled. She shoved contract pages into her tote. Wind kicked the metronome into motion. Pendulum clacked 3 times, then calmed. Silence after the clicks felt louder than argument. That night, Clarissa sifted sleep like flour through worries. She pictured April's childhood bedroom, the posters of galaxies, star charts pinned above homework desk, how her daughter once believed every constellation spelled her name. Somewhere along line graphs and pitch decks, the sky had narrowed to a screen's rectangle. Clarissa drafted an email to April, erased, drafted again. Be sure you still fit within the frame you're designing. She hit send at 3:12 a.m., pulse sinking to the whirl of her apartment ceiling fan. The next afternoon delivered 2 catalysts. First, a burst pipe at the credit union flooded the lobby, scattering Clarissa's outreach brochures like soggy origami. While maintenance crews clanged, she borrowed the basement break room for an impromptu lunch. A regional manager visiting from Springfield cornered her over lukewarm coffee and praised her community seminar numbers, hinting at possible district-wide trainer role, travel twice a month, salary boost, influence without bulldozers. Clarissa felt a flutter. New stage, yes, but no one's home would be the ticket price. She asked for time to consider, mind already thumping with workshop modules she could expand. Second catalyst, a viral tweet thread. A neighborhood student posted drone footage of the proposed luxury development overlay, contrasting it with images of the thriving garden and families shelling peas on benches. The thread soared, "This is how you kill a community disguised as upgrading it." April, tagged as brand lead prospect, woke to notifications spiraling like locusts. Within hours, she fielded calls from the agency's crisis PR team instructing her to control the optics. A phrase she once deployed now felt aimed at her chest like a rubber bullet. She drove to the garden, hair unbrushed, heartbeat pinging between temples. Clarissa spotted her from the teaching circle where teens practiced cadence by planting syllables. Each seed dropped to match a metronome beat played softly on phone speaker. April's heels sank into mulch. Kids side-eyed the stilettos, but she ignored the mud-blistering patent leather. She asked Jay for the metronome. He fetched it from gate hook, pendulum creaking faint. She set it on a cedar bench between them. "This thing," she said, eyes glossy. "You gave it to us as a reminder, but now I can't escape its shadow." She nudged the pendulum. It swung, ticked once. Every second feels like someone else's judgment. Jay crouched, wiping soil from hands. "It's not a judge, just a heartbeat you can hear." His voice cracked on "hear." The kid who earlier rhymed hope with rope looked up, sensing poetry in real life. April swallowed. "The agency wants me to issue a statement claiming the redevelopment will add green spaces, jobs, safer streets, but drone footage already tells a different score." She lifted the metronome until pendulum shook free. "How do I stop this from beating me up?" Clarissa moved beside her. "By deciding what rhythm deserves amplification." She placed 2 fingers on the box, stilling it. Silence is a kind of beat, too, if chosen. Teens hovered at respectful distance, ears tuned. A girl in braided pigtails piped up. "Maybe you remix the beat instead of trashing the whole track?" April's mascara smeared as she laughed softly. "Exactly." She turned to Jay. "Help me craft a counterproposal. A design that renovates unused factories north of the river. Luxury views without tearing out these beds." His shoulders unknotted. "Now that's a rhythm I can landscape." All eyes shifted to Clarissa, waiting for conductor's downbeat. She smiled. "Begin with a refrain. No uprooting what grows people." Kids cheered, high-fiving April, who only yesterday embodied corporate glitter. Otis at the piano launched into an improvisation that folded hopeful chords into laughter. Pendulum rested still, yet in the hush between notes everyone felt new tempo pulsing. Evening painted sky persimmon. April and Jay spread sketches on picnic table, Sharpies circling alternate sites. Clarissa guided teens in planting fall carrot rows, teaching them to drop seeds 4 heartbeats apart, slow enough for roots to anchor. She thought about the credit union promotion, bold as sunrise, and sensed how her own path mirrored these seeds. Expansion downward first, depth before height. On bus home, phone buzzed. April's tweet apologizing for previous silence, promising revised project built with community not over it. Hashtag rhythm of roots. Replies rolled supportive. Clarissa typed, "Proud of you," then paused. Proud had once been forbidden, now it tasted rightful. She pressed send. 3 dots, then April's reply, "I can finally read that word without flinching." Clarissa looked out at skyline where cranes loomed, some raising hope, others hungry. City lights winked Morse code messages, some warnings, some welcomes. She closed eyes. Inhaling diesel mixed with fried chicken wind, pendulum might still tomorrow, but heart knew its measure. September's first cold front sharpened blue sky to crystal. Garden plots blazed with marigolds and kale. Clarissa arrived early Saturday, regional manager's offer letter still vibrating in glove compartment. She found April and Jay dressed in matching hoodies reading Southside Harmony Project, leading volunteers in repainting a distressed mural on adjacent brick wall. Teens from storytelling class traced outlines of sunbursts and saxophones. The mural, Jay explained, would mark the start of a pedestrian green corridor linking block parties to library to senior center. Clarissa's heart hammered, not panic but momentum. She gathered volunteers for a break, sharing cinnamon rolls while Otis played funk progressions. Then she cleared her throat. "I have an announcement too." Crowd quieted. "I'm accepting a new role, district outreach trainer for the credit union. I'll travel, but I'll base curriculum on what we've grown here. Budgeting as planting, compound interest as compost, and our garden will host pilot classes." Cheer erupted. April hugged her, smearing paint on Clarissa's sleeve. "You just leveled up." Clarissa winked. "Only because you stopped editing my verbs." Jay rang a tiny cowbell scavenged from craft store, calling everyone back to brushes. Music resumed, guitar now joining piano. Clarissa rolled paint onto brick, strokes syncing with melody rather than ticking. Near dusk, City Alderwoman Ms. Vega toured the site, intrigued by viral buzz. April pitched the revised luxury project relocation, citing environmental impact studies Jay compiled. Ms. Vega nodded. "Put it in proposal form. My office will champion it." April's shoulders sagged relief. Jay squeezed her hand. Clarissa felt the domino effect click, voice unlocking another voice, rhythm echoing across bureaucratic corridors. End-of-day reflection circle formed. Teens shared metaphors, seeds as syllables, roots as memories, trellis as support network. Clarissa asked April to close with a beat, passing her the once intimidating metronome. April lifted the lid, but instead of winding, she simply set it on ground. "Count with me," she said. Feet tapped soil, slow, communal. No pendulum required. Time bent to collective pulse. In that moment, Clarissa realized culmination wasn't thunderous. It was a hush where everyone hears each other breathe. As stars pricked sky, Otis played lullaby chords. Volunteers drifted home, leaving mother, daughter, and son-in-law under string-light canopy. Clarissa stretched sore back, pointing to mural now gleaming. "Look, the saxophonist note points at the metronome." Jay laughed. "A reminder, music lives in pauses, too." April pressed her head to Clarissa's shoulder, and in paint strokes, budgets, tweets, she lifted the dormant box. "Maybe this belongs in the library display case, context for the garden's story." Clarissa nodded. Legacy not as burden, but as artifact, lesson, and relic. They locked tools in shed, city hummed soft beyond hedge. As they left, Chicago River whispered metallic under bridges, carrying echoes of earlier ticking, but drowned now by footfalls matching one another. Clarissa glanced back. Garden glowed beneath moon, mural trumpet seeming to play silver air. Tomorrow she'd draft district curricula. April would polish proposal. Jay would meet Alderwoman's urban planning aide. Yet in this transition minute, they simply walked. No roles, no scripts, letting sneakers scuff gravel in imperfect sync. Unmeasured. Free. September's last Saturday dawned clear as pressed linen, the sort of sky that makes even rust-flecked fire escapes look purposeful. Clarissa stood at her apartment window, coffee steaming against the pane, and watched the city stretch awake. Her new district trainer badge lay on the counter beside a stack of workshop binders, their covers splashed with marigold and teal. Budget like a garden, grow like a story. In 2 hours, she would board a commuter bus to Englewood High for her first off-site seminar. By evening, she'd hurry back to Bronzeville for the neighborhood festival, christening the South Side Harmony Corridor. She breathed in, felt nerves flutter, then exhaled to the rhythm she'd taught her teens. In for 4 counts, hold for 2, out for 6. Space enough for doubt to drift away like dust through sunlight. The metronome no longer sat on her dresser. Its absence made the room surprisingly wide. She smoothed the lapels of a deep plum blazer, not crimson, too formal for teenagers, and definitely not beige. Pinning a Billy Basil leaf to her collar, she headed downstairs into morning that smelled of pavement warming and cinnamon evaporating from Panaderias 2 blocks east. Englewood's auditorium buzzed with Saturday lethargy, students lured by extra credit, parents by free donuts. Clarissa opened with a story about her garden's cucumbers outgrowing their trellis the way interest compounds when you leave savings undisturbed. Chuckles replaced eye rolls. Halfway through, she noticed a senior named Amari tapping a sneaker against seat legs to pace every slide transition. The beat synced with her own cadence. Together, they lifted the room's energy until questions volleyed faster than she could tally. Afterward, the principal thanked her, pressing a brochure for the school's arts grant into her hands. "We're hunting collaborators," he said. "Your storytelling club could plant here next." Opportunity rang like a high note held without strain. She promised to follow up, heart humming. Outside, clouds herded over the lake, but sunlight persisted in diagonal streaks across the bus windshield. She checked her phone. A flood of texts from April, logos approved, city grant awarded, local news van confirmed for live shot at 5. One line glowed brighter than the emojis. "Bring the teens anthology. Reporters want proof of roots." Clarissa smiled. The anthology's first print run sat in her tote. Cover art sketched by Jay, interlocking vines spelling "Hear Us." She arrived at the garden just as volunteers strung final pennants between streetlights. Barbecue smoke curled over raised beds, trombone warm-ups drifted from the pop-up stage. A banner stretched across the newly painted mural, Harmony Fest, from seeds to stories. Clarissa spotted April near a vendor tent, laptop balanced on a hay bale while she coaxed a reporter toward proper angles. Mural first, condos never. Jay jogged over, shoes dusted green. The alderman's office announced zoning adjustments this morning. Original demolition halted, developer exploring riverfront warehouses. Joy lit his face like sunrise on copper rooftops. Clarissa squeezed his forearm. "You played the long note." He shook his head. "We all did. Counter melody only works with a solid bass line." He tipped an imaginary hat toward her tote. Teens arrived, brandishing fresh copies of Hear Us. They formed a semicircle on straw bales, rehearsing verses under Otis's quiet piano chords. Clarissa passed out basil leaf bookmarks cut from surplus stems. "Mark the page where your heart thumps hardest," she told them. They grinned, some tucking leaves behind ears instead. Under bleachers, April unpacked the once intimidating metronome from a velvet pouch. She'd polished the wood to honeyed sheen and replaced the worn felt pad beneath its feet with a square of cloth patterned in garden greens. "Library curators coming at 6, she told Clarissa, "wants to catalog community artifacts." She hesitated. "I want you to present it." Clarissa's fingers brushed the brass pendulum, still but ready. "Only if you stand beside me." By 4 o'clock, festival rhythm crested. Food trucks lined curb fronts, speakers thumped soul classics, and children wove between picnic tables like bright thread needlework. Clarissa circulated with workshop flyers. Each handshake left her pulse steadier. She paused at the painting station where 5-year-olds dipped brushes into buckets labeled share, save, spend, translating allowance lessons into neon splatters across scrap plywood. Their giggles braided into trombone glissandos, crafting a soundtrack no studio could afford. Near the main stage, April adjusted a wireless mic on her blazer lapel, nerves flickering behind confident posture. Clarissa joined her. "Remember your own advice. Breathe, then speak," she whispered. April nodded, thumb brushing the microphone head like a familiar shell. Reporter Maggie Chen signaled countdown. April stepped forward, river breeze riffling cue cards she never glanced at. She began with the night news tweet thread that sparked outrage, rolled into her father's long-ago departure that taught her to curate certainty, then pivoted to a confession. Control can be a velvet-lined cage, plush, but still a cage. The audience hushed. Even grills paused their sizzle. She unfolded Jay's garden blueprints, letting cameras zoom on loops of raised beds shaped like treble clefs. "We believe progress sprouts where community already has roots." Applause rippled outward, tugging more bystanders into the crowd. When she finished, Jay carried over a flat of kale seedlings. Kids rushed forward to plant them in demonstration boxes. Reporter leaned into the lens. South Side shows how redevelopment and heritage can dance to the same beat. Clarissa's turn followed, anthology presentation. Teens filed on stage, books pressed to chests like passports. Instead of podium, Otis eased into a riff, minor key resolving into bright major, giving them pulse. Amari opened with a poem comparing shuttered corner stores to teeth lost in a smile still worth saving. His sneaker tapped soft 4/4 on plywood. The crowd echoed with fingertip drumming on paper boats, on soda cans, on heart cages. Other teens layered narratives, grandmother's bus rides, lake wind blowing pennies off tombstones, laughter ricocheting from brownstone to brownstone. Clarissa listened backstage, tears catching on lashes each time a voice cracked then soared. When the last line floated down, "We are not redlined, we are underlined, emphasis on alive." Applause thundered. She and April stepped forward, holding the metronome between them. Clarissa addressed the audience. "This box once measured a silence so heavy it dented generations." She opened the lid. Pendulum hung inert. "Today it retires because these voices keep our tempo." She handed it to librarian Mrs. Ramirez, who lifted it like a chalice, then tucked it into satin-lined case. Otis struck a gospel chord. Choir volunteers launched into "This Little Light of Mine." Clarissa found herself in the front row, arm in April's, voices blending, each lyric a seed propelled on wind toward open lots still waiting for color. She glanced at Jay, leading kids in call and response claps. Rhythm traveled across festival grounds like summer lightning, bright, charged, impossible to ignore. Dusk settled, kiosks dimmed, but lanterns lit the corridor path, recycled jars with solar lids, each painted by neighborhood families. Clarissa strolled beneath the glow with April, shoes dangling from fingers, toes relishing cool soil. Cicadas thrummed counterpoint to distant sirens softened by distance. They paused at the mural now illuminated by discreet uplights. Saxophone notes blossoming into vines, skyline silhouetted behind. April traced a painted vine avoiding wet dew. When I read "Proud of You" that night, I finally understood how much weight you'd carried in silence. Clarissa tucked stray curls behind April's ear. I carried it because love sometimes mistakes itself for padding. Moonlight gilded April's cheeks. "We won't repeat that rhythm," she promised. They linked pinkies, an old pact resurrected. Nearby, Jay chatted with Ms. Vega and a developer rep newly converted to adaptive reuse. Clarissa observed how his gestures matched phrases, hands sketching shapes in air. April would weave those shapes into decks by Monday. Harmony. Otis ambled over. Fedora tipped back. He offered Clarissa a thumb drive, recordings from Teen Workshop, just in case the world needs extra proof. She laughed. The world always needs extra proof. He winked, especially when truth's got a quiet alto voice. They shared companionable silence, watching lanterns sway. Wind shifted, carrying basil and charcoal scents. Clarissa's phone buzzed. Message from Englewood principal. Funding approved for pilot financial story class. She turned screen toward April. They squealed. Plans unfurled, bus stipends, garden tours, anthology exchange program. Futures, once contorted by fear, stretched like dancers warming pre-performance. A final ceremony remained, bearing a time capsule near the metronome's former hook. Kids squeezed poems, herb seeds, Polaroids into a stainless tube. Jay welded cap. Clarissa slipped in one crimson thread cut from her dress hem, a reminder that voice and color needn't shout to endure. April added her original 90-second toast edit, words crossed out in red pen. They lowered capsule, covered it with soil, planted sunflower seed on top. Otis offered a benediction chord. The seed's cradle vibrated briefly, as if acknowledging. Midnight neared. Volunteers collected trash, laughter softer now. Clarissa, April, and Jay lingered at the garden gate. Pendulum-less hook creaked in breeze. They tied a length of jute there, letting it dance free. Walking home, Clarissa carried anthology box under arm and thought about tomorrow's lesson plan. She'd ask students to write a dialogue between two beats. One steady, one syncopated, exploring how tension births groove. She imagined their pens tapping desks, paper rustling, stories germinating like September kale under frostcloth, slow, resilient. Beside her, April hummed unfamiliar melody. "What song is that?" Clarissa asked. April shrugged. "Something new. Might mix it with those trombone riffs." Clarissa joined, guessing harmony. Jay added low whistle. Three voices stitched night air into quilt of promise. At Clarissa's apartment stoop, they hugged long. April whispered, "Thanks for letting me hear the quiet." Clarissa smiled. "Thanks for turning it into music." Jay tipped imaginary conductor baton. They departed. Silhouettes merged into lantern haze. Inside, apartment smelled of basil and cedar from festival wreath. Clarissa set anthology on table, lit a single candle. She glanced at empty dresser spot where metronome once lived. Instead of hollowness, she felt spaciousness. She listened. Not for TikTok, but for buses rumbling, neighbors laughing, her own breath. All sounds braided into lullaby. She scribbled in notebook. A home is a choir of ordinary noises allowed to matter. Blowing out candle, she crawled into bed, basil leaf still pinned to blazer on chair. City hush rolled through an open window, punctuated by a lone saxophone riff rising from a rooftop bar, echoing the mural's painted note. Clarissa closed her eyes. Sleep approached like curtain call, house lights dimming, audience exhaling satisfaction. Tomorrow, new measures awaited. Tonight, anthem ended on a chord that promised reprise.